So, my last songwriting vlog was 3 months ago. Since then, a lot of things have happened that I feel I need to discuss in order to justify why my progress in regards to this Jinx and Silco song has been absolutely barren. First of all of the momentum that I had built up with this song was brought to a screeching halt by the fact that I had to write a different song for my final project for my world literature class. It's a really good song! I'm really proud of it. But alas, that meant no Jinx and Silco. As soon as summer break started, I went on a trip to Colorado with my parents, during which I thought I would get some writing done, but I didn't because I was too exhausted after finals week and was just, weird surroundings. I was just completely thrown off my rhythm in every way. Then, when I got home, I immediately had to start an unexpectedly very grueling summer class, which I just completed a few days ago. But I had to study like 3 hours a day minimum. It was ridiculous. In the midst of all that, I ended up getting cast as Cinderella in International Lyric Academy's production of Into the Woods. So not only am I having to prepare the hardest score I have had to learn yet as a musical theater performer, but I'm also having to prepare to go to freaking Italy. Which, not complaining, this is like a dream come true, but it's a lot. It takes up a lot of time. And the other thing that has been keeping me busy is that I am voicing Jinx in the podfic of my favorite arcane fanfic, Forward Never Forget by @Lullabies on AO3, which is like a dream job. You guys know how badly I have wanted to play Jinx ever since I watched the show, and to get to do it even in this capacity with such delicious writing is just so wonderful. It's such a dream. But even though the fic only updates like once a month, so technically like I'm gonna be working on this for like probably like 3 years minimum, I've been like so addicted to working on it that I've been pumping out like a chapter a day for the past couple of weeks. It's a lot of words. Homegirl has a lot of monologues, and it's very, very intense. So yeah, that's taking up a lot of my time. Anyways, when you put all of that together, I am really just now having the time and energy to put my big girl panties on and write some freaking music. And the thing about songwriting is it really is a muscle. When you haven't used it for a while, you can't expect to immediately get up again and expect it to work, especially with a song as musically and lyrically complicated as this is probably going to be. I have had several instances of just standing in the shower, desperately willing my brain to come up with any words that I don't utterly despise, only to come out completely empty-handed. And I've spent the past couple of days just devoting a couple of hours just to slowly forcing my brain back into writing mode. The more time went on, the more I realized that I really didn't like basically any of the scraps that I'd come up with a few months ago. I've also read quite a bit of fan fiction about these two to prepare to write this song in the hopes that it'll give me a stronger sense for the character voices and imagery and stuff that I want to incorporate. But as you know, I have a big problem when it comes to comparing myself to other people. And so what often ended up happening when I was reading this fan fiction is, oh my gosh, this prose is so brilliant. There is no way I could ever come up with anything that comes close to describing these two and capturing their relationship as well as this author has. And that honestly caused me to be quite a bit harder on myself than I usually am with writing. It felt like everything I would come up with, I'd be like, that's not good enough, that's not good enough, you'll never be as good as this writer or that writer. In the short run, definitely a curse. Writing is usually something that is so much fun for me, and this is honestly one of the first times that I've ever felt kind of miserable trying to write a song and genuinely like I'm not the right person for the job. And that's like a real fear I've had to confront in the past few days. I've actually cried multiple times trying to write this. In the long run, now that I actually have some bars though, I feel like it's probably going to be better because it's going to, push me to hold myself to a higher standard, and hopefully the song will be better for that. Fingers crossed. Normally the way I write is I'll think a bit, and when I get a lyric that really, really grabs me, I'll build off of that, and the writing process usually goes much easier from there. and I really didn't felt like I had anything strong enough to be able to truly build off of. So I'm kind of starting from scratch in terms of the lyrics. The original concept I had for this song also ended up being really frustrating and limiting, which is why I have ended up sort of reinventing it and doing something different. Originally, this duet between Jinx and Silco was going to be sort of rooted in the river scene, but I quickly realized that it was restraining the subject. It was really restrictive to the subject matter I could cover in this song and the kinds of narrative voices I could have the characters take to have to connect everything back to this one scene. So last night I came up with a completely new concept that I think is going to allow me to do more of the things I wanted to do with this song. So I've sort of come up with a new scene that is slightly inspired by Forward But Never Forget. So the sort of loose form this song is going to take is Silco is singing to Jinx while she sleeps and sort of musing about their relationship. Jinx, meanwhile, when it gets to her section, she's sort of going to be in a bit of a like fever dream state, and she's going to like gradually get more and more disturbed, and then she's gonna wake up, and the part where Silco and Jinx sing together is going to be basically him comforting her. I had talked about really wanting the beginning of this song with Silco to feel like a sort of dark lullaby, and I feel like this scene justifies that a lot more than if I had tried to somehow make that fit the river scene. This allows me to cover a lot more territory in terms of the characters talking about their pasts and their inner worlds, and also maybe being a bit more direct with how they feel about each other than they would have been able to be if I'd stuck with the river scene. Okay, so it's been about 24 hours since I filmed the first part of this video, and I think it's pretty safe to say at this point that I've overcome my writer's block. Last night I had maybe 5 lines or so. Now I've been writing off and on for most of the afternoon, and I have most of the lyrics to Silco's first section of the song and a pretty solid stretch of melody. So yesterday I'd been at it for just over an hour, and like right when I was on the verge of throwing in the towel, I came up with the first lyric that I did not absolutely hate. And that is, "My child sleep the kind of sleep I'll never know again." This just kind of says so much of what I wanted to say with this song in such a simple and eloquent manner. It's so full of care and tenderness and concern. It's so, I want you to have all the things that I don't get to have and I don't deserve to have. And then very quickly after, I came up with the next couple of lines. "Undisturbed by screams and smoke and callous, cunning men." So there's a lot of really tasty alliteration with this line, and there's also a bit of self-awareness or projecting, whichever way you want to interpret it, on Silco's part. There's a big "like me" in parentheses there with that "callous, cunning men." "It's all for you, the schemes I scheme, the throats I cut, the dreams I dream." I'm so proud of that one. It's simple and striking, and it's just got the perfect juxtaposition of brutality and idealism that just really boils down everything that is essential about Silco's character. And then finally, a couple of hours ago, I came up with the lyric that will close out this stanza. "Let them say I care too much, they'll never know your cherished touch." That one just, it gets me in the heart. Oh my god. I'm crying over Silco writing this. Like, when am I not? But also, like, guys, you don't understand. He's evil because he cares. I really love "Let Them Say I Care Too Much" because it's so simple, but it's also so layered. As I've said before, this song draws a lot of inspiration from Forward But Never Forget because we get so relatively little of Silco and Jinx together in the show, so a lot of stuff you have to infer. And like I've said, a big thing in Forward Never Forget is like the perception of Silco and Jinx's relationship as being too close, getting too far into possibly romantic territory, which like that's not what's actually happening, but it definitely looks like it, and that's something that's like very heavily scrutinized. And then you also have the side that's like Jinx is Silco's one weakness. She's the one thing that he would sacrifice everything he's put into Zaun's independence on behalf of. And in the eyes of everyone that's in his network, this is a liability. It makes him weak. It's the perfect mix of like agonizingly sweet and just that perfect little bit of possessive. It was a painstaking process to finally plunk out a melody for this that I felt did the lyrics justice. It was just a lot of like noodling that seemingly went nowhere. Everything sounded too generic, too cliche, too forgettable. But I finally hit a melody that felt haunting and sweeping and tender and like familiar but not cliche, which is definitely what I'm trying to strike with this. Like lullabies are meant to be simple. They shouldn't be anything too crunchy, too complicated. Like it should sound like something you could sing to a kid, but not like a ripoff of something else. I have entered this melody into Muse score and I've got the cello playing it. It's like just chromatic enough. This little rubato right here just perfectly brings out the yearning in that line. That's the good stuff. That stanza will close out this section of the song, and I will somehow have to find a way to segue into Jinx's section, which will be quite musically different. I have one other complete stanza of this part, which comes a little bit earlier, and it's the one where Silco is reflecting on his past. This is one of my favorite lyrics I've come up with. The imagery in it is so tasty. This is one of my favorite lyrics I've come up with. The imagery in it is so tasty. All the good that once was me rots on the river floor. Now this old devil haunts the crumbling bones that washed ashore. I feel like it really captures this idea Silco has that he came out of the water a completely different being and something that isn't quite human anymore. And of course you have the theme of mortality and aging that I mentioned really wanting to bring in with the imagery of the crumbling bones. And that continues on the next lyric. Staving off his slow decay, a monster made to make them pay, who swore he'd never be betrayed or love again. I have the sense that Silco sort of feels like Jinx is the only thing keeping him alive at this point, kind of figuratively and literally, because she's responsible for injecting his eye. I think this sets that up really well. Silco is such an interesting and challenging character to write for because there's this grandeur and eloquence and larger-than-lifeness to him, but he's also quite practical and earthy. You have to strike that balance between being very lofty and sincere and also being quite dry and cynical. You know, be poetic without being flowery. And flowery is a weakness of mine, okay? Okay, I am positively giddy. It is 2 days later, and I have finished Silco's entire solo section. Okay, so here's how the song opens. Sleep, my little firework, the hope of Zon's oppressed. No other girl has ever been more worthy of such rest. She's violence and vivacity, divinity and darkness. She's mirth and melancholy, and she's mine. I've known for a while that I wanted to include the words "she's mine" at some point in this song. Because like I said, I want this song to make people a bit uncomfortable. I want to bring out those yandere girl dad vibes that Silco very much has. But I didn't know how exactly I wanted to lead into that, and eventually I just came up with this list of contrasting alliterative adjectives that build into that very nicely. He's just gushing about her. Figuring out the opening line is always pretty difficult. I almost never come up with how a song is going to start first. Things that it is very important the opening line accomplishes. You need to know that he's watching her sleep, and there needs to be some kind of indication that he's singing to his daughter so people don't assume this is a romantic love song the first time they hear it. So I came up with the violence and vivacity bit first, as far as this first stanza goes, and then last night I came up with no other girl has ever been more worthy of such rest. And the thing about that line is there are so many good words that rhyme with rest. Like usually I'll come up with a line and then I'll pick out like the ending word of that line and look up words that rhyme with that. And usually there'll be like one really good option and I'll come up with the other line based on that. This was different. I was actually suffering from a wealth of potential rhymes. Like I could have gone with pressed, I could have gone with best, I could have gone with repressed. There are like so many different possibilities. But it's the opening line, so it's very, very important which word I picked. Oppressed was definitely the word I wanted to use because it has the most relevance to these two characters' story, and I'm very glad I found a way to make it work. So this whole stanza is followed by all the good that once was me, blah, blah, blah. Then after that whole section, you have, but this clawing, clinging creature flung herself into my arms, and year by year she made of me a hostage to her charms. Her laughter is my only light, a brilliant comet taking flight. One day she'll leave me on the ground, till then I'll safeguard what I've found. From the original brainstorming sessions, the alliteration of clawing, clinging creature is most likely the only thing I liked enough to keep. That just sets up how they met very well. Lynn pointed out something very, very interesting about the "a hostage to her charms" line. I love that you're not shying away from the Stockholm Syndrome vibes with the hostage lines, and yet it's so insidious because he was the one who kidnapped her. And he's trying not to think about the fact that one day she's going to inevitably outgrow him. I like the safeguard what I found because it's a bit of an objectification. What is a word you use to refer to a thing, not a person? And then that goes into "my child sleep, the kind of sleep I'll never know again." I realized something very interesting about that line. It's like the parent-child version of the lyric in Even Into Hell that's like, "I'd give you the things I know deep down we don't deserve." And the funny thing is that both of those were the first lyric I came up with for their respective songs. The "one day she'll leave me on the ground, till then I'll safeguard what I found" couplet was the last thing I came up with for this section. And I also had some alternative options, like "one day she'll leave me on the earth," and then I was maybe gonna do something with like rebirth because that's a theme in the song. Silco talking about his rebirth and wanting to help Jinx grow into her own. But I feel like that's such a big thing and there's not enough room to flesh it out in just 2 lines, and it would feel awkward if I tried to force it in, and there's plenty of room to talk about that idea later in the song when they have their actual sort of duet. I still do not have a title for this song. I think I'm definitely not going to go with "Show Them All" like I originally thought I might, because that's turned out to not really fit the tone I'm trying to strike with this thing. I kind of really don't want to use any lines from the show because I feel like it would be too obvious. I really, really wanted to call it Silco's Lullaby, but that really only fits the first third of the song, because obviously Jinx is gonna have her own section too, which is very much not a lullaby. I've like asked people to give me titles because this song is so difficult to title because there's not like an obvious hook. Like nothing I've written really gives title to me. Like with Even Into Hell, that song was never going to be called anything else. Like the last line of the chorus hits, "Even into hell, I'd follow you," and you're just like, that's it. That's the title of the song. In terms of music, yesterday I was trying to work out the melody for the "All the Good That Once Was Me" section, and I was originally going to try to make it a bit crunchier and less pretty than the original melody that I had come up with for "My Child Sleep, the Kind of Sleep I'll Never Know Again." But then nothing really sounded good, and then I just realized I can probably keep the melody mostly the same, but like add some crunch in the harmonic texture. I definitely have a tendency to overcomplicate things for myself, and like the more I like kept changing the melody back to the original, the more I was just like, you know what, sometimes repetition is okay. So I think this whole section is going to be like its own little song with like an AABA form, with like the first stanza will have basically the same melody as the last one, and so will the second stanza, and then the third one will like follow a similar pattern but be different chords and different notes. So yeah, the first 2 stanzas are gonna have that same "Sleep, my little firework, the hope of Zonza pressed, no other girl has ever been more worthy of such rest," like that. I definitely also think there's gonna be enough variety in the instrumentation that it doesn't feel too repetitive, because the parts where he's singing to and about Jinx primarily are gonna have this very rhapsodic, lush lullaby feel with lots of sweeping piano and string lines. But I also really want to add in some like moodier rock touches, especially when he's singing about himself. I have been continuing to obsess over "Cerise" by Ghost, which I realized this week that I have been pronouncing wrong for a year and a half. Cerise is similarly this very tender love song that's also quite dark and manipulative. I think the opening sort of overture of that song is just so brilliant in its weight and crunchiness and dissonance. And I'd really love for the second stanza of this song to have a similar vibe, but maybe not quite as heavy. I think that's gonna do it for this songwriting vlog. I am so excited to be writing again. Like, I am just feeling better and more motivated than I have in weeks. Like, I genuinely forgot how good writing lyrics could make me feel. I think this is some of my strongest writing yet, and I'm really, really excited to see what the rest of this song has in store. Let me know what you think. Let me know what sorts of things you're excited to see from the rest of this song. Let me know what your favorite lyric is. Give me any title ideas if you have them. Bye!